Well, hello from Team Seafoam. We've had a good time putting our thoughts together and are excited to share them with you. Our project was to consider how artists could be engaged to creatively reconsider bus stops, not just as pieces of art, but as opportunities for creative placemaking that lift up the overall bus riding experience and create places that are more connected to and reflective of their communities. Our research found lots of wonderful and inspiring examples of creative bus stops, but what affected our team's direction the most was visiting our own bus stops and thinking about how our bus stops, through the lens of this project, about what a bus stop could be and maybe should be. So in a moment, Tinashe is going to tell you about her experience visiting a stop in Mableton, which was really a turning point for us, where her bus stop was, or this bus stop was nothing more than a place where the bus stops. There's a mint sign, a trash can, and a square of dirt where people stand and wait. We asked ourselves if an artistically designed bus stop can lift up bus riders and affect the vibrancy of their communities. What do the neglected and non-place bus stops tell us? And what do they tell us about tell the people that they serve? So we tried to think less about producing a singular art installation and more about how artists could be engaged to help shape a system-wide infrastructure of neighborhood bus stops and prioritize bringing a basic level of comfort, safety, and dignity to the places that serve the very communities that are most dependent on buses.
Imagine it is the first day of your new job, or maybe you have a date with someone you finally connected with, or better yet, you are on your way to visit a loved one who you've not seen since before the pandemic. We believe that for many riders, they are robbed the dignity they deserve simply by standing in front of a bus stop that tells the story of neglect, fractured identity, and lack of belonging. And so our vision is to center the dignity for bus riders through empathic imagination and design inspired by the voices of the community, one bus stop at a time. And we believe that we could facilitate that shift by focusing on increasing the functionality of the bus stop, by amplifying the personal stories of bus riders and inviting their voices to be authors in devising a functional artistic design that celebrates not just the travel experience for the bus riders, but the surrounding community as well. And in order to achieve our vision, we were inspired by Maslow's hierarchy of needs by focusing not on the pinnacle of the triangle, but on the bus stops with deficiencies. So here's our process. Our project assumes that creative bus stops have the potential to be impactful places for their communities. And so we went about building a team. But before we can ask a community what they want, we need to know who they are. And our first step was building a team of integrity with an emphasis on including bus riders and artists in a myriad of ways throughout the journey. So for example, we acknowledge that bus riders come from a diverse community. And so there are some riders that are exclusively using that as their form of transportation. There are some riders who have multiple modes of transportation, or those that use the bus just for an occasional specific purpose. The key is to not treat each bus stop as a singular opportunity, but rather affect a comprehensive system with the aim that every bus stop might be artistically and humanly considered. And so we would collect stories and information. And an intentional responsibility for every team member would be to ride the bus for a specified amount of time. And we hope that by engaging from the inside, we could build trust, not through interviews or interrogation, right? But through genuine conversation that inspires storytelling, asking questions like, how long have you used this route? What's a memory you have of using the bus? And collecting stories that inform not only our team members, but also the bus riders, so that it becomes a shared dialogue and experience. And of course, we know that people are going to open up in different ways. And so we will meet people where they are at, collecting stories in different forms, either through the MARTA app or conversations on the bus or at the bus stop, surveys, shared pictures on social media platforms. Heck, we could even use Post-it notes, voice recordings, thumb up or thumb down to a pop-up question, always respecting anonymity at all times. And so we leaned into designing a matrix, needing a flexible system for making decisions that would guide us to identify which bus stops get prioritized. And this is where the Maslow's hierarchy of needs really helped us to create this matrix of values in which to make our decisions, considering bus stop demographics, existing conditions, and basic yet different needs of each bus stop. Asking questions like, is our bus rider safe? Do they have the information they need to get where they're going? What is missing to equalize the bus stop needs for all bus riders? And so this holistic approach to provide dignity on which we can then build artistically inspired structures that bring joy and promote connections and inspire self-actualization.
So in 2017, Houston designed a prototype bus stop and spent about $2.5 million on 200 new bus stops, so at a cost of about $6,000 per stop. And that basically provided a bench, a canopy, and a light, and some paving around it. Interestingly, the same year, they spent about $5 million on a single rail station, adding escalators and a canopy. Bus stops are where about half of all mass transit riders wait for their rides, but only receive a tiny fraction of the overall funding for when compared to rail stations. So we just see the system of budgeting and funding as essential for realistically delivering stops beyond the most heavily used stations. We considered a couple of ideas. First, the idea in the sketch is that there could be a module that includes a bench and a canopy, where a single module could be used for providing the lightest used stops or aggregated together to align with different stop capacities. The second idea is that the artist that's engaged, their deliverable from the first engagement could be used as visioning materials to be used for a campaign to raise awareness and for a fundraising campaign that could fund a system-wide transformation.
And so as we were dreaming the possibilities of this project, we imagined returning to the Mableton Parkway stop and recreating that experience. So imagine it is the first day of your new job, or maybe you have a date with someone that you finally connected with. And better yet, you're on your way to visit a loved one whom you haven't seen since before the pandemic. You arrive, and under a creative shelter inspired by the local community garden, 2 blocks over, brightly lit, and next to the digital information screen, you touch the interactive stories panel, where you hear, read, and/or see a cultural experience that has been curated specifically from your community. And maybe at this stop, while waiting for your ride that is 11 minutes away, you enjoy Atlanta's own first poet laureate Pearl Cleage's poem, We Speak Your Name, visually interpreted by a local dancer. We are here to speak your names because of the way you made us, because of the prayers you prayed for us. You are the ones that we conjured up, hoping we would have strength enough and discipline enough and talent enough and nerve enough to step into the light when it turned in our direction and just smile a while. We are the ones you hoped would make you proud, because all of our hard work makes all of yours part of something better, truer, deeper, something that lights the way ahead like a lamp unto our feet, as steady as the unforgettable beat of our collective heart. We speak your names. We speak your names. Thank you. We are Team Seafoam, and this is our bus stop vision.
All right. Dorian McDuffie, you want to take away with questions?
I am so excited that this is the one I get to lead. First of all, phenomenal job, guys. This was really great. I'm hoping that this chat has not frozen because I'm not seeing. Okay, I do have a few questions in here. So the first question I have is, did you give thought to how to engage the transit agencies who tend to operate the bus stops? For example, they will have data on ridership and safety, or engaging local architects, artists in a design competition for bus stop designs. And Amir sent that question in. It's a great question.
So I'll jump in. This is Deanna from Seafoam. Great job, team. That was beautiful. But we did think about bringing in MARTA specifically at the beginning of the process in that building of the team. We also wanted to leverage the applications they already use, like the bus stop app that they currently use for input. A design competition is a great idea. I don't think we discussed that, but I think that could be a really beneficial component.
And I think we also looked at community partnerships. We looked at organizations including the Georgia Transit Association, Transformation Alliance, StoryCorps Atlanta, to take in the community stakeholders and placemakers too.
So I have a few questions. So MARTA currently uses numbers to determine who gets a bus stop, unless you have a really forceful community advocate, like one of the ones I've been working with. And I'm just wondering how you're going to consider, so if that's their criteria, you kind of have to go by that, but what criteria would you put on top of that? And also, what do other towns consider before they'll do a shelter?
I'll jump in again, and team, feel free to add. We talked about creating a decision matrix in order to select the bus stops. Part of that would be ridership numbers, but we want to make sure there's other equity issues so that we are hitting that point of dignity. So making sure that the community diversity, looking at those metrics, like you mentioned earlier, MARTA has a lot of demographics. We can make sure that the buses we select meet that community's demographics. What stops haven't seen investment in X amount of years could be part of that decision matrix. Just really starting to create a process so that we are not just hitting numbers, but we're hitting these other markers as well.
That'd be great to be able to bring to them, like not just numbers. Okay, so I have another question. Have you considered working with city planning departments to kind of build out around the bus stops? Because MARTA kind of controls like the bus stop, but the right of way surrounding that and getting to the bus stop safely and pleasantly would be the
Yeah, that's such a great point. Like the image that Tinashe showed doesn't have a sidewalk. So how are people getting to that stop? And so it's a really important consideration. I think we talked about having as part of our team, city officials and city staff to help at early onset of identification of needs and issues. And then beyond that, actually implementing that and finding the funding for that, I think could be part of the fundraising opportunities that we discussed as we start showcasing the imagery of what could happen there and the potentials. We could really leverage that to bring in those other amenities.
And I think that's also a great chance to, like I was talking about before, partner with community organizations and other community initiatives. For example, the city of Atlanta last year started a Designing for a Difference initiative. And that takes in city planning and the bus stop. So it would be a great way to partner with them and have a total program.
And I was gonna just throw one more thing out there. And Tinashe, you kind of spoke that poem so eloquently that this kind of is related to that. And just the way MARTA does live music in the railway, like putting live music at a bus shelter or a live performance or an opportunity to make art at a bus shelter for kids, a place where that there are kids waiting, for a bus would also be kind of one of those fun activities that could move around. But you guys did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to expand on that a little bit, we were really inspired by the idea that each bus stop doesn't live in this vacuum, but it is actually a channel to connect into the community. And so each bus stop could be sponsored by different art entities, right? So one could be inspired by the symphony, one by a theater, or just a different interactive points that whenever somebody interacts with it, they might get a point on their MARTA app, and it could lead to these cultural points that then get them tickets to go to the museum at the end of the month. And just finding ways that we're connecting and pouring back in.
Thank you, Tinashe, and thank you, Team Seafoam. Thank you, Dorian. That was great.